sort of the worker, the founding members. And that was really an opportunity for us to better understand um, what it what it meant to be a worker cooperative, because suddenly we were bringing in folks who weren't in those initial meetings, weren't part of the push to start a organically certified, locally sourced uh, worker cooperative brewery. And how did they feel about it? Were they passionate about the beer? Were they passionate about just the community? Were they passionate about democratic workplace? So those were really difficult because, as I think we've sometimes faced, is the worker cooperative piece, while essential, is sometimes on the back burner to keep the doors open, because telling the story of a worker cooperative, many people find fascinating, but just as many people are like, I just came for the beer. If you can give me the beer, that would be great. And so it was really trying to understand that. And so those processes were a lot of bringing more people into the discussion, having conversations about what it meant to be a worker cooperative. It did result in actually a bit of a rebrand where we dropped the cooperative uh, part of our working name because it was very confusing to a lot of our customers and to the larger community. So those were all pieces. So while we were all in support of it, we got to hear those voices among us who weren't um, the founders saying, this is actually can be a roadblock to what we're doing, even though we can continue to do the worker cooperative pieces in the community engagement. We don't need the cooperative as part of the name. So there was, a lot of consultation, and the end result though was just that perfect alignment of those who were coming in and those who were already here to come to that vision.
Yeah, I guess Shift went through a similar story of change in when we were founded by some SFU students who created this sort of as a project and then made it happen. One of them stayed on and was our executive director. So when I first joined Shift many years ago, it was led by an executive director. And when they left, we decided to take on a different approach to leading the business. So we switched over to what we call the team of teams, which has been a process for sure. It was started just as I was getting to Shift and has been, worked on solidifying that change. And that's a big thing, understanding how to run a business and having people who are part of the co-op who have never run a business before and taking on leadership roles and, really working to communicate and bring all the teams together. So yeah, I feel like change is a helpful thing because it makes you rethink, how this business needs to run and what's the best way for the people who are here now to continue our vision.
Yeah, just jumping in for a moment there, going on that thread of change. We had a lot of changeover at LFFC in 2020. We lost about half of our small team. We were only four at the time, and we were at one point down to two of us, and rehiring for the new positions. And the two that left were really the two that had been there the longest. They had a lot of institutional knowledge. This is a pattern that we see a lot in
Mm-hmm.
cooperatives, that it's really about the people that found the co-ops. And then, when they move on, which inevitably change, adaptation, it's going to happen. It can be quite difficult. So, and in that short amount of time, COVID happened. We also were supporting a lot of our various different cooperatives in the various different needs that they had. Some closed, some shifted their different models. Some of them did exceptionally well. We're trying to manage hiring more people to bring in to manage the flow. And so it was really complex. And we also gained an extra four positions, or extra two positions on top of that. So we actually expanded our team to a team of six. Four of them were new to our organization. And, it's not been without its tough times, but it's been incredibly rewarding. We've been implementing new changes. We're currently entering into a new phase of strat planning, which is really exciting. And I think that we're learning how to really communicate with each other in ways that make sense for us. And I think being involved in various stages of these processes has been really rewarding. We're definitely in a better place than we were a year ago, which is really exciting to be able to see. And I think that it also demonstrates one of the benefits of having a cooperative in that you're able to weather those changes. You're able to adapt and see how those different things that come your way are able to really serve you and your membership. So I feel like, yeah, there's definitely been changes, and I've been really proud of our team in terms of how we've been able to manage.
Okay. And speaking on behalf of kind of cooperatives first, what we do is we are a business development organization. So when we are working with groups, it's usually at the startup phase. But there's also change that happens from like the start of the idea to actual implementation. So our position is to create that support for the group to um, accept and acknowledge that there is change needed, and we facilitate the discussion to help with the groups come up with solutions that will work best for them in their dynamics. So it's we don't say you guys need to change in this way or this will work better or anything like that. It's just the facilitation and the support. So that is our position in the process.
Trista, out of interest, when you're working with different cooperative startups, are for the most part, are they all members at that point, or do you see that some are members, some aren't, and how does that affect sort of some of that development piece?
We actually will do like work with the group for either an explore meeting, which we'll use like the business model canvas and um, organizational design. So to understand who the key players are and get the group to identify. We do have, we will have groups come in where there are outsiders, but we also need the members to solidify who the members are and, you know, their impacts and making sure that their voices are heard. Like it's great to have outside support, but we really want to work with the members and create the co-op in the way that they want to see the business grow and thrive.
Yeah, and similarly at local food and farm co-ops, we're also a second tier cooperative. So we do help a lot of startups. We also support cooperatives that are in various different stages. Some of them are some of Ontario's oldest food co-ops as well too, pushing 50 years or just having celebrated their 50th anniversary, which is really exciting. So we also have members who are not cooperatives, who are individuals or advocates within the sector, since we also support food and farming initiatives, but also have a range of different services and programs that we also can offer. But it's interesting too to be able to see some folks who have the idea of starting a co-op, but they don't quite know where to start, or if it's a group that's looking for land, looking for resources. There's various different entry points, I feel, that different folks come for different reasons.
I think what fascinates me is usually the succession. Susanna, you sort of mentioned that earlier, is when those founding folks are on their way out for a variety of reasons. How well does it go? And we're not in that. We're still in very much. We have all of our founding members as members still. But that is, to me, is sort of that fascinating, and it shows beyond the business viability is the cooperative viability, because they can be two different things. The business can keep thriving even though the cooperative aspect is lagging behind.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting to see, sometimes people are interested in the cooperative model because they're just tired of being the one person that's doing all of it. And they want people to get behind their idea, and they're really excited to be able to find a way that others can get excited about it too. However, it's really tricky if you don't have that membership already established, because cooperatives exist to be able to serve the membership. right?
Mhm.
So starting with who your members are, like what that social purpose is, like what is it that we're getting together for, and really having some good solid reasons that everyone wants to be able to see initiative happen. That's really what's going to continue driving that initiative and driving that cooperative, even when things get tough. Because at the end of the day, you're all there for a reason. You're there to be able to work together. I think without those people and having that core group, it's really tricky to move forward. Like Trista was saying, establishing that core group, being part of that, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the main ingredients that we talk to groups about. Like we do have when we do like have people come and contact us. It's usually either they have an idea or they have a group and they just need to flesh out the ideas. So we work like right from the idea phase and it's always the people, making sure you have the right people involved. And we've seen people come through the door that are so in love with the cooperative model, but it's not the right fit. It's like making sure that the core group is there and everybody is in alignment. So, like, I'm totally in agreement with you, Susanna, that it is the core group.
Trista, could you talk a little bit about um, those moments when you have to get everyone on board, when you're trying to gather that group initially, the first founding of the co-op, to make sure everyone's in the right direction? How do you make sure everyone's actually on the same page? Do you have any stories of introducing people at alignment?
um, we really don't want to. We're not the ones to introduce and say this person should be part of your co-op or anything. We just want to make sure that uh, if there is a core group, but that they want to bring on more people, helping them develop their pitch or solidify their idea. So we do work. One of the products that we offer is the explore meeting, where it's exploring the idea through like the business model canvas, as I said before. So um, the group would be able to understand the roles, the responsibilities, what the co-op looks like, what the business will look like. So it's bringing, uh, and for the group to decide if they have the right people involved. So we do have a website called the Co-op Creator, and we give templates and on all different situations. So one is like getting the core group together. So that is something we have online, and like questions that could be posed and tools and templates that we make it available to anybody who is just trying to start their co-op or making sure that the right people are involved at the time. So.
I have to say that I actually really appreciate that. I have definitely referenced it and have visited it multiple times, and you definitely have a lot of great free resources on there. And I think
And
that's
if
one
you,
of those things that, sorry.
no, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
finding those kind of resources, finding co-op developers is so critical, um, which is why it's amazing to have those organizations, which people don't even immediately think about, because so often municipalities, government, they're like, well, you've got your local chambers of commerce, but they don't do the co-op piece for the most part. Like you need to have the dedicated organizations that are looking at co-ops and making them happen, because if you walk into the small business startup center of your local community, they don't really talk about cooperatives.
Yeah, that's something I find really awesome about having joined a co-op. It's very much a sharing community. Like it didn't just start with me going to a CWCF conference, although that was a big piece for me, meeting other co-ops. But everyone has been, there's resources out there and we can share things and let us tell you what worked for us. And I find you don't see that as much in other business models, and so it's a really cool thing that we're not just within our own cooperatives being like, let's share and talk and communicate, but in the wider co-op world, there's always a piece of, this sharing of knowledge, which is really awesome.
I totally agree. With the services and the work that we do, part of that is mentorship, and connecting those who are looking for areas of improvement in a specific area, to connect them with someone who's also an expert in that area. I think that's one of the strongest pieces about being a cooperative, and that's the sixth principle. Cooperative is my favorite one.
Yeah.
And I think it's really great that, we don't all have to be pitted against each other in this capitalist society. There are ways in which we can find ways to work together and support each other's initiatives. And just because somebody's got something over here doesn't mean I have to go and try and grab it. It can mean that we can learn from each other, and absolutely have that kind of exchange. Have any of you had a specific experience that you can speak to in which, that mentorship or cooperation amongst cooperatives has been beneficial?
I do. Having gone to the CWCF conference, we ended up connecting with Just Us Coffee, who are over in the east part of Canada, and we were going through wage discussions about how do we value new members and people who are taking on added responsibility within the co-op. At that time we had basically just a flat structure of time in, and you get a raise at certain increments, but we wanted to value those who were putting in, and going above and beyond and taking on these bigger roles. And it was a hard discussion within the co-op, and we were kind of stalling a little bit. And Joey and Frank from Just Us Coffee were like super helpful and shared tons of resources and, literally like forms and things that they used when they went through the whole thing with their co-op, which helped us to get the discussion going and really bring some outside knowledge and like, okay, we're not just going in circles about this. Here's some structure of how we can make this happen. So like just meeting some other co-ops there and happening to be in a discussion at the same time in a room with them, and then they're like, oh yeah, we have these things and we'll share them with you and I'll email them to you right away. And it was really awesome. And we often reach out to them still, like just being like, hey, what did you do with this thing? And it was a very neat moment. That you don't have to reinvent the wheel, I guess. It was like a really cool thing. It's like, oh, someone else has gone through this exact same problem, and they're willing to share something about it. This is great. So
Yeah, the CWCF conferences in terms of like helping to do those network pieces are phenomenal. So, and in our area, so we've big shout out to Together We're Bitter, which is the other sort of worker cooperative brewery in Ontario. They're located in
yeah.
Kitchener, and we've been able to be back and forth with them. We have some future projects sort of that we want to do, almost like an ombuds person with them. So you have an outside consultant at each brewery to go to. They also were really instrumental in pushing forward the conversation around sexism in brewing in Ontario, as well as some other Canadian breweries. There was, conversation, and they really helped to push it forward, brought together a lot of breweries into presentations and conversations, and it's great to have them just up the highway. And we've been able to do, back and forth things, and there's sort of so much on the horizon. It's really great. So yeah, Together We're Bitter. They started up around the same time we did, same ethos. They've got the same motivation that we do, community mindedness, just being out there and having fun. And they've been one of those great cooperatives in the area.
Um, on so as Cooperatives First, we are a nonprofit organization, so we are not a member because we do only have one member, and it is Federated Cooperatives Limited on behalf of the cooperative retailing system. But we were created to create awareness of the co-op model, and it was part of their giving back to the co-op sector. And so we were created to create the awareness of the co-op model, and then create practical resources for co-ops to start up, grow, and thrive. But the reception from the co-op sector and co-ops throughout, well, not only Canada, Western Canada, Canada, and even the US has been great with people sharing their knowledge, experience, and helping us inspire new co-ops and sharing their experiences. I found with most of the groups that I work with, they want to hear stories and experiences and what are things they should look out for and some of the pitfalls. So it's been great working with co-ops throughout throughout like what North America,
Yeah.
basically. So it's great.
There's really some keen insights. I recall, chatting with, oh my goodness, now the name has escaped me, the Toronto Cycling Co-op store in Urbane Cycle.
Yeah.
Urbane. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, I
With
needed to turn
Reba.
around with my, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And
she's
there are
excellent.
sometimes little things. I remember having a conversation with Reba and sort of, musing on that sometimes being on the board, if you're volunteering, that's not everybody can just volunteer up their time. And she was like, very clearly, Urbane had made the decision, you get paid for board work. And that was one of those light bulbs as well, to recognize that there are those times where being able to do sort of the extra pieces for the cooperative you're in or that you aspire to is can be about privilege. And that if you don't have the ability to do that, if you're not being paid for those kind of hours, and that was a big like, because it's so true. Having been on other boards for other organizations, volunteers, you're just like, oh, why aren't people stepping up? Well, sometimes it's really difficult to just put in a bunch of hours for no remuneration. And that was, again, a key piece where we said from that day forward, it's like, yeah, if you can log that in your time cards is you're doing cooperative administration work. You're doing the work of the cooperative. Yes, you're not serving a beer. You're not driving the truck down the road. You're doing the other pieces that are critical and that we want you to do, and we want to enable you to do that. So yeah, I remember that conversation with Reba, and she was just like, oh, absolutely. You can't ask people to come in on a Thursday night, once a month and put in like 4 hours of conversation and all of this stuff and all that the additional emotional and just sort of like mind work that goes on to it, and then just expect them to come back again month after month. So yeah.
It's a really important point. And, trying to find ways to be able to do that and build that in. Is that something at London Brewing that you guys have been able to build in? And if so, how has that impacted your, I don't know, ability to be able to do that, to factor in that extra cooperative development time for your team?
It's been really critical about bringing it in, the cooperative development piece, that's the work you're doing, is that it's reflected also on like those were your hours, right? Especially small business owners, they are not unaccustomed to 50, 60, etc. hour weeks, but it's not sustainable. They need to at one point be taken aside and said, you got to stop this. And so at the same time, in a cooperative where you're doing all of that work, if you're not mindful that that's part of the work you're doing, that's how you very quickly again get into those just unsustainable workflows. And so that has been a key piece, is that moving away from holding board meetings or membership meetings outside of hours, saying, we need to hold these during sort of our normal business hours, figuring out how that works in the service industry, because if you're open, you're open. Do you close early? All those kind of pieces. But that's been a real, it's been a shift that's been required, is to say, let's not do AGMs on a Sunday, because that's you're not getting that time back, and recognizing that and trying to recognize as well that every time somebody comes in on a Sunday, especially if they're not being paid for that, that's more time that you are taking from them. So we really value, the laborer within the worker cooperative, in the sense that you should get paid for what you're doing. I again working on other boards where we're all about volunteerism, and then within the cooperative where we're like, we don't want you to volunteer. We want this contribution from you, but you should get paid for those things. It's a different mentality, but I think a critical one for the health of the cooperative, because you want people doing that work. Well, then you need to show that you value it.
Mhm. I don't know what else to add to that. You said it very well, David. Yeah, we also pay our board. We've switched to a stipend. Just yeah, it's been a hard year, but yeah, we still acknowledge that board work is important work and it's hard. And um, one thing that I do find within the co-op, at least my co-op, but I've heard this from others, is that you sort of get the same group of people that are jumping in and stepping up to do this extra work and taking on those things. And so, yeah, it is nice to be acknowledged for that, even if it is a small stipend. But it's showing that, and marking down those hours. This is what it takes to run this business, and if we just pretend that isn't really happening and not marking it down, and it, it's easy to forget that there's this whole other side to the business that needs to happen. And yeah.
And I think for us, one of the other pieces is that if you're not a salaried employee, and again, being in the service industry, we have a lot of folks who work in our tap room and retail store who this is an additional piece of their life. It's a
Mhm.
part-time job. How do we entice them then to for
Yeah.
membership or for board participation? Because again, it needs to make sense in their life, and that you can't just say, well, you're here anyways, because when they are there, they're there for a particular shift. It's not a salaried employee who may be able to shift around their day a little bit more. So I
Mhm.
think that's a critical piece as well. And that's something we've been still exploring and understanding. And again, folks from Just Us Coffee, they've certainly gone through what does that look like? What does membership look like? What does it look like when you have more casual employees? And
Yeah.
how do you engage and ensure that their voices are also part of that conversation?
Mhm.
Obviously, Just Us Cafe has done quite some great cooperation amongst cooperatives.
Yeah,
They've been
they
really
It's
when
great to
when
be able to see.
yeah, when Sandra mentioned, Frank and sending over things, he was so gracious when we're like, again, I think a lot of us, even if we're in different industries, the alignment as worker cooperatives is really similar because you do encounter some of the same issues. How does the board be responsible back to the members and back to non-members? And should there be time in lieu for those things you're doing? All of those pieces has been, and they've gone through it, and they've gone through iterations of it. So
Mhm.
they are a cooperative that doesn't have, I don't think, any founding members anymore, or if any, one or two.
Same with
And
Shift.
so,
We have no
yeah,
founding
they've
members anymore.
yeah they've gone through all of those pieces, and every I think generation sort of figures out well what works for us, which is an important piece to consider as well. That democracies change. So the company shouldn't stay the same. That cooperative should shift as new members are coming in.
Yeah, it's really definitely a big part of it. I think that, any business model really needs to be able to be adaptive because there's going to be things that happen. There's going to be market crashes or pandemics and things like that come out of left field. Um, but I'd be interested, Sandra, to know since you are a cooperative that no longer has founding members, what have some of those big shifts and changes looked like for you guys at Shift?
Yeah, well, part of it, I mean, the final founding member that left was the executive director. So they had, I'm not fully sure the like how they ended up going from that, but I think just as other founding members left, it was like, okay, I will kind of take on this mentorship, leadership role, which in some ways is very helpful to have one person kind of overseeing everything, and that's more of an office dedicated job. So one of the things at Shift is, all of us trike. And so we're trying to fit in a lot of other business running work alongside delivery work. So we're running out and doing things. And yeah, so switching over to the team of teams was something, but people sort of became team leads just because there was a small core group of members at that time. When I joined, there were only 4 members. So now we're up to 9. Yeah, and so it's been some learning of like, okay, how do I be the lead of this team, and how do we as a core group of team leads, and the board bring in this new model and make sure we're communicating in the right way and sharing things. Yeah, it's been like probably about a 2-ish year process, and we're finally now being like, okay, we're getting more into our rhythm. And for sure the pandemic, like, it used to be a lot of in-office conversations just happening. You felt like you knew what was going on, and then all of a sudden when everyone's working from home, it's like, okay, how do we bring us back together? Are we succeeding in this 1-hour meeting to get all the info shared, and feel like we all know what's going on? And yeah, it's been an interesting process, and we're still working it out and trying to get more people involved in different ways and stuff, and solidify our roles for sure. But yeah, yeah.
I have a question for Trista. Have you seen a shift and change since COVID in interest in cooperatives, or how the different communities that you are working with perceive cooperatives, or other issues that you feel like co-ops may be like best positioned to be able to support?
Um, the actual interest in co-ops hasn't really changed that much. It actually didn't decline. I'm still seeing the same amount of interest. Actually, maybe a little bit more now. I think uh, sometimes the thinking of a co-op, and yes, this would be good for uh, the future or something I'd like to work on. And with COVID and everything slowing down, it really shifted to people thinking, okay, now is the time to actually work on it. While others that were working on it before needed to take a pause, mainly with the way Indigenous communities and are structured, and with like leadership. So the more leadership driven cooperatives did slow down because of uh, all the aspects of like dealing with the community, the health, the education, like, and the people. So the co-op took a back seat, but from individuals thinking of how we can work together and um, coming together to find new solutions have increased. So it like really did even out. Um, giving people time to think and actually act on it has been a shift. So, and not only for co-ops themselves, but kind of pre-pandemic, I was doing a lot of traveling, community meetings, being out there. And so it had to shift the way we work to more of an online format, and creating the Your Way Together website, like resources for Indigenous communities, and the Your Way Together guidebook. So the pandemic and travel restrictions really motivated me to get these out the door to be available for everybody, and gave me the time to work on it to reach individuals on that level. So uh, that was
As
a
an
shift.
That's an excellent outcome of something like COVID, if I may say so. I found it really interesting on our side with LFFC. So I'm one of our Southern Regional coordinators. So if someone's interested in farm cooperative
Oh,
Oh,
in Shiloh, in the Can you hear me?
You paused
Am I
for a
still there?
We
moment
lost you
there,
for a
but
moment.
Oh, sorry.
You were
yeah.
Okay.
at Food and Farm Co-op in Ontario.
In the South, then myself or our project manager, Shyla, will be the person that speaks with them and helps them that process. And so I did find within COVID, we did have more interest in folks who were interested in starting up cooperatives or wanted to explore that a little bit more. But I have to say that one of the interesting things that happened was with a cooperative that I was a part of supporting in its initial stages in 2019. So in the Northwest region, our Northwest coordinator helped to facilitate a beef cooperative of a bunch of different smaller scale family beef farmers to come together under one umbrella cooperative. So that way they're able to produce, their small scale, family quality, high quality beef on the same standards all across the board, but also have enough quantity to be able to supply under consistent circumstances. So for stores, for folks that are looking for that on a regular basis. And pre-COVID, I think that it was hard to kind of get off the ground to be able to, it was harder to be able to sell, 25 pounds of ground beef at once because, it's quite a lot to put in your freezer. Or like, a quarter animal, etc. Where you could just go down the store to the Sobeys or drive to the, wherever it is to be able to get your beef. However, when COVID happened and hit, people were starting to see the advantages of having locally sourced beef. They didn't need to stand in line in Sobeys for, knowing where it comes from, and having a consistent pickup point, and also having that 25 pounds of frozen beef in those like 1 pound packages. That's what I want to stock my freezer with because it means I get to stay home. So we really saw that model pick up and a lot of interest, and being able to see that once they post on their Facebook group that they have, X amount available for this certain region in Northwest Ontario, that we're being flooded with lots of requests and inquiries and pickups. So it's really nice to be able to see that, like, yes, we knew this model is going to work in keeping Ontario beef in Ontario, and to be able to see that people really do want that, and it's a model that works.
I have a question here from Hazel Corcoran in the. She mentions how some of you spoke about the value of networking at CWCF conferences, and CWCF has tried several other platforms and has not been able to figure out how well online. At least, not yet. Who found ways, especially in this COVID time, to online?
This isn't exactly answering that, but I was gonna say, since COVID, like I have attended, a Jedi workshop. I've learned about BIPOC co-ops. I've learned about Indigenous nation co-ops, and because we can't meet in person and stuff, it feels like there's more of these opportunities to join, and like we're just being creative and like putting it online, and so you can be like, oh yeah, I can go and like listen online, even maybe while I'm at work for an hour, which has been really amazing. And instead of I was wondering maybe about Trista, like instead of bopping all over the place visiting groups, like it's maybe somewhat easier in a way that we're doing certain things online just because more people can join at any time. But personally, like I really struggle with social media. I've had a hard time with like I don't know, I'm not doing a great job of like putting things out there. Like even today, I'm like, oh, I forgot to like fully share this more. So yeah, the online engagement, while both, somewhat easier, it's also for sure still a struggle. And I'm not sure how to engage more people. Maybe some of you could speak a little more.
I think we've been pretty lucky that for being a small organization that we are able to be flexible and try new things. So um, from our blogs, podcasts, now getting into the webinar space for our different products, workshops, and my colleague has a goes and does Facebook Live. And so those have been really helpful with like Ask the Expert. So we have had people who are just on through Facebook being able to ask questions live and being answered quickly with no commitment, like to wait and to register. They just kind of pop in and ask their questions, and we get follow up requests from these. So I think it's just trying trying different things. And we do evaluate to see which ones we get the most response. But I think it's just being engaging, and like we have a great communications team that works hard on making sure that we're hitting the right the right targets, the right messages, and getting the response back. So.
Go for it.
I was just going to say that every year we host our annual assembly, which is an in-person, usually in person. Last year was online, gathering of our members and food and farm sector folks, cooperative folks, every spring, late winter, early spring, and so every single time I feel like this event happens, the real value people feel is in connecting to each other. Like you were saying about the CWCF conferences. And as much as we get out of the speakers, the workshops, and the actual content of that, it's the in-between backroom chat while you're walking to the next session. It's the connections you get when you're chatting around a campfire and you're just like hanging out. It's all those different little pieces. And so one of the number one pieces of feedback that we got was being able to create a network, some kind of online space where members can connect to each other, where folks that are, part of LFFC can connect. So we have a Facebook group, and I don't really feel like it's actually the end solution. It doesn't really end up being the place that people really do that, interconnecting with each other the way that I was kind of envisioning. So I'm also open to other suggestions as to how people want to be able to connect with each other in a way that makes sense. We're talking about what if it's a Google group, what if it's a something, but it's also tricky because you don't want to just add another thing to everyone's plate as well too, right?
Yeah, I think we've seen similar as that the type and depth of engagement really shifts. And I think of just pre-pandemic, Friday night concerts that were free, community bands, community food. People are just coming in, and there's that vibe. And what grows from that is some of those other networks that they'll come back the next day and be like, "Oh, hey, I'm also a food vendor. I would love to come serve food here, or I'm also an artist, etc." It all sort of fell away in March 2020, and then I mean our retail team, what they did to shift to online deliveries and online store in about 24 hours, it seemed that they had went from zero online store to a fully functioning online store, and then from there it was a lot of just keeping people engaged at the level where they're at. So it's that problem, Susanna, as you mentioned, like the real deep conversations or just the nice little in-betweens at conferences that you get. We couldn't conceive of a way to replicate that either. Just the sort of nice, hey, somebody comes in on an afternoon to the bar and can chat with them, or they're just coming through for retail, and you get that opportunity to just talk for, even if it's 30 seconds, couple minutes. That just was there was no ability. So it was shifting to doing some of our Friday night concerts on Instagram Live. Some people would come in, you kind of see them come and go, so you're sort of keeping them around. You're letting them know we're looking forward to doing it in person, but not we just couldn't find a way to replicate the in person, and so we sort of didn't. And yeah, a real hesitation to introduce new things because we've gone down the Lumio route, we've gone down the Slack route, we've gone down WhatsApp, and it's everywhere and it's all the time, and that's also a problem of how do I keep my life when my phone is always dinging because somebody's awake. So that's yeah, we're just looking forward. And again, patio season was a perfect opportunity to restart some of those things, and seeing people in person and being able to just do in-person meetings out on the patio. Um, Luckily, we've installed a lot of heaters, so we'll be able to do that for at least another month, maybe, of meetings on the patio. We'll see.
If I was in London, I'll come visit you and have a meeting
There
on
you
the
go.
patio.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, heaters with the
Definitely.
push of a button will heat up the space where you're sitting. So
Yeah, I'd like to add in at Strategy Mates online called Social Economy Connect for people. So I will include the link in the description for the replay. So if people are interested, we usually have Friday morning, at least morning in Manitoba. I post a discussion question and we get some response, a little bit of support, and it's a space to meet other people who are in the trenches doing this work. So we are approaching the top of the hour. Is there anything, any last comments, any last leave with everyone who's watching? Sandra, would you like to start?
Oh, me first. Just like I really value getting invited to this and seeing, lots of different faces, from around Canada is really exciting. And I've I've loved connecting with the co-op world. I've done lots of work with other groups, but joining the co-op world has just it's a constant, growth and empowerment thing. And even when it's hard, these things, help remind me that I'm doing this for a reason and a purpose. And yeah, I look forward to connecting more and doing more, and one day doing more in person. I will mention also the CWCF conference is coming up. It is November 16th to 18th, and there's info online. And I know, we've been hoping to host it in Vancouver. So next year, that's the plan. But this year it's online, and it'll hopefully have lots of breakout rooms and times for people to chat and connect in that more social way, as well as, workshops and things like that. So yeah, just thank you for letting me be part of this. I love talking about shift and co-ops, and yeah.
David, any last thoughts?
I was just going to sort of endorse that for anybody who's, they've got an idea. It's a business idea or a community development idea or just an idea to change something or do something, to really consider the cooperative model, to look for those folks out there to help develop your cooperative. I know, because we did it in Ontario, that there are barriers at times to making cooperatives happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can be part of the solution by also, becoming a cooperative and helping to make the change to make cooperatives easier. So, reach out to to those cooperatives in your area, the credit unions in your area, all of those pieces of this. It's tremendously rewarding, as Sandra, alluded to. It can be a lot of work. It is another thing that you're sort of doing on top of, the business perhaps, or on top of everything else. But there's a lot of these connections, and it's for us as a, community-minded craft brewery. This is all part of it. This is key, is to make these connections. So just endorsing cooperatives in general, and that those who are thinking of starting something, consider a cooperative.
Excellent. Susanna.
Yes. Thank you so much for being able to have me today. I really appreciate it. I am going to plug for local food and farm co-ops. So I imagine you'll put the website and our Instagram and things like that, social media handle there too. We are going to be having some upcoming webinars. We have a series that we're doing with our Northern Food Distribution Network, which is a network which connects a lot of different food projects all throughout the north in Northern Ontario. And so our next ones will be up on our website at the end of this week. And also more information will be coming out in November about our annual assembly, which will be in March. I also wanted to plug the side project that I'm doing. I'm happen to also be on the Jedi Committee for CWCF, which is how I was connected here from Hazel. So shout out to Hazel. Thank you. And my business partner with Freedom Dreams Cooperative Education, which is her founding project. Also, we're both on this committee together. And the work that we do with Freedom Dreams is about highlighting the work of and supporting uplifting BIPOC cooperatives. And so I'd say also if you are interested in co-ops, if you identify as BIPOC and you're not quite sure where to start, feel free to connect with me or check out Freedom Dreams. And last opportunity, I feel, really to see how the systems that are in place, that were in place, were not serving us in the ways that we necessarily thought that we had to accept. And there's ways in which cooperatives, the cooperative model, can help to support different ways of doing things and bringing a lot more value to the work that we do. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you. That's links for all of the businesses and enterprises and initiatives on the replay on YouTube in the description, as well as in the follow-up email to everyone who signed up for the panel. Trista, last words.
Okay, we have a number of webinars that we are planning. So the next one is an artisan cooperative, Indigenous artisan cooperatives. So we will be having an artisan co-op from New Mexico. And they're actually called ARTZ, ARTZ, will be joining us to talk about their cooperative with the Zuni people, and it's 100% Indigenous owned. And then we will be having one on November 17th, which is finding win-wins, kind of the when, where, and why of partnerships. And all of our resources can be found. We actually have the Cooperatives First website, so cooperativesfirst.com. Our Indigenous cooperative site is the yourwaytogether.ca. And also for all our tools and resources, we want to share as many resources to help cooperatives, both starting and established co-ops, on the Co-op Creator. .ca. So please check out our websites and follow us on social media, because we always have new products and resources available. So.
Wonderful, and I will make sure to include afterwards. Thank you all for having you. I really appreciated the conversation. It's really good to see the enthusiasm for all these once you get going. I would also Canadian Worker Co-op Federation for partnering, and we're also promoting their conference coming up, Worker Cooperatives Building Better Together, Mieux Construire Ensemble. It is a conference happening on November 16th to 18th, 2021. There is a link in the YouTube chat, and there will also be a link in the follow-up. And it is about worker cooperatives demonstrating resilience and solidarity in the COVID-19 pandemic, although we have faced significant challenges. There are strategies of worker co-ops in dealing with the crises, such as the theme will cover how communities would benefit from building more cooperatives, including through the lens of racial and economic justice. The conference will include keynotes, peer learning, workshops on financing and marketing, and presentation on building anti-racism in worker co-ops. Some Richard Bosley from SETSI, Kelly Story from La Siembra Co-op, and Susanna Redekop, who happens to be featured in this session. The free conference will have English-French interpretation, and the sponsors include the Cooperators, Sisters of St. Martha, Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, Just Us Coffee Roasters, and the Ontario Co-op Association. Much to everybody who's been involved to make this happen, and everybody who has joined us. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.